We welcome you back to this channel. Here are 3 stories about experiences with Ouija boards. We'll see how a young man awakens a sinister presence, a skeptic encounters a strange being, and a friendship is threatened by a creepy creature. Go ahead, turn off the lights, and let's take one more step into the world of the unknown. In the first story, we'll meet a skeptic who, after a Ouija session with friends, faces a terrifying figure with red eyes in the back seat of his car. What would you do if you were being led toward an inevitable accident?
Chased.
I had never believed in ghosts. I always trusted only in what I could see and what was scientifically justified. But that changed due to something I shouldn't have done. One day, I mentioned to my friends about a man I had heard of who could help people contact their loved ones through a Ouija board. We decided to try it for fun, without really expecting anything to happen. The next day was the weekend, and we went to see John, the supposed paranormal investigator. Although he warned us about the dangers of contacting spirits, we were eager to try it. With all the lights off, John lit some candles and placed the Ouija board on the table. He instructed each of us to put our fingers on the pointer while holding hands. At first, nothing happened, but then the pointer started moving on its own, spelling out that the spirit was evil. When I asked about my future, the spirit said I would have a car accident that night. Scared, I left the room, followed by my friends, and we decided to leave and go home. I dropped my friends off at their houses and then headed to mine, still uneasy about the experience. While driving on a dark road, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a dark figure with red eyes sitting behind me. Its piercing gaze froze my heart. Fear took hold of me, and I braked sharply, getting out of the car in a panic. I checked the back seat, the trunk, and even under the car, but there was no one. Convincing myself it had just been my imagination, I got back in the car and continued driving, though my breathing was rapid and my hands trembled on the steering wheel. Suddenly, I felt cold, burning hands grabbing my shoulders from the back seat. The pain was unbearable, as if I were being burned with a branding iron. I tried to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a horrible, deformed face with empty eyes and a macabre smile. The creature opened its mouth, and a guttural sound filled the car, making every fiber of my being vibrate. In my desperation, I tried to break free, but the entity's hands gripped me harder, burning my skin through my clothes. Driving at full speed and out of control, I saw a car coming toward me. I swerved sharply, but it was no use. The crash was inevitable, the impact was brutal, and everything went black. I woke up in the hospital, dazed and in pain. The doctors told me I only had minor injuries, but they couldn't explain the burns on my shoulders. I shuddered at the memory of the ghost's hands. In the stillness of the night in the hospital, things became even more terrifying. I heard voices and whispers around me, unintelligible words that seemed to come from another world. An icy breath caressed my neck, making my skin crawl. I looked around, but there was no one. The shadows in the room seemed to move on their own, forming figures that disappeared when I tried to focus on them. My bed began to move slightly, as if someone invisible was pushing it. I tried to call a nurse, but the emergency button didn't work. I felt trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. I closed my eyes, hoping it would all end, but the voices grew louder, whispers I now understood as threats and taunts. The next day I spoke with my friends. One of them said he had experienced something similar. We didn't know what to do, so we went back to see John. He told us that we hadn't properly dismissed the spirit and broke the circle by letting go of each other's hands. The only way to get rid of the spirit was to play again and follow the rules. We all agreed and put our hands on the pointer. This time, we only asked the spirit to leave. At first, it refused. The temperature dropped drastically, and a cold wind swept through the room, making the candles flicker violently. Strange shadows appeared on the walls, twisting unnaturally. The table trembled, and objects fell from the shelves. We insisted, begging the spirit to leave. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the pointer stopped at the goodbye position. The candles went out, and the wind ceased. John told us the spirit had gone, but the atmosphere remained charged with a disturbing feeling. After that experience, I began to believe in the paranormal. I am grateful that the spirit left, but I wish I had never played with the Ouija board. One of my friends was deeply affected. Since that night, he has become very distant. We all believe the spirit stayed with him. I can't help but feel deep guilt for involving my friends in something we should never have started.
In the second story, we'll see how a friendship is cut short by a Ouija board found by chance. A brilliant student begins to be harassed by a horrifying black creature that consumes her spirit. Can you endure the sight of that creature with yellow eyes?
On the shoulders.
I had tried to erase this story from my life until recently, when that thing appeared again at my doorstep. When I was in high school, I had a best friend, Tina. We used to be together all the time. One day, she brought a Ouija board to school in her bag. I remember seeing all those strange symbols and her telling me, "This is used to communicate with spirits." I had heard of those things before but had never seen one. She said someone had left it at her doorstep. She was very excited about finding it and even wrote her name on the back of the board. She wanted me to try it with her, but I was too scared and simply refused. A few days later, she told me she had tried it with one of her cousins, and something responded to their call. After that day, Tina's behavior started to change. She seemed more disturbed and distracted. During classes, she didn't pay attention, even though she used to be the best student. She would suddenly get scared in the middle of classes without anything apparent happening. When I asked her, she told me strange things. She said that when she used the board with her cousin, apparently the spirit they contacted never left. She invoked it, but didn't know how to make it go away. She also told me that it now followed her everywhere, all the time, and she could see it. She said that if she didn't communicate with the spirit from time to time through the board, it would bother her a lot. At first, I thought she was just making up stories, but then things started to get worse. One day, she came to me and showed me her arms. There were different marks, more like someone's handprints, but in a way that no one would grab a child. Not only that, there were cuts all over her body. I asked her what had happened, and she told me that she had refused to talk to the spirit and obey its orders, and it did that to her. At that moment, I started to believe her. I asked her more about who this spirit was and what she talked about with it through the board, but she wouldn't answer. She said the spirit had told her not to tell anyone, or it would do something really bad. No matter how hard I tried, she never told me anything. She became quieter and more withdrawn. She even started walking with a hunched posture, as if someone were sitting on her shoulders. On her birthday, I tried to give her my chain with a cross as a gift since I come from a religious family. But when I tried to give it to her, she started backing away, as if she were afraid of it. Then I saw a small creature that I don't know how to describe. It was a small creature, bald, completely black, with yellowish eyes and sharp nails. It had no clothes and was sitting on her shoulders, looking at me with a very angry and threatening expression on its face, as if it wanted me not to get close to her again. It was only for a moment. I saw it, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared. What I saw was so horrible that I ran out of the room and never spoke to Tina again. Her condition worsened, and soon she stopped going to school altogether. I don't know what happened to her after that, and I didn't try to find out. Whatever she had summoned through that Ouija board was not willing to leave her alone. It was as if it had taken Tina's body hostage. 15 years have passed since that happened, and a few days ago, I found that same Ouija board at my doorstep. I know it was the same board because it had Tina's name written on the back. I don't know how it got to my house, but I don't intend to try it. I have stored it in the attic carefully, hoping that no one else will use it and end up like her.
Finally, we travel to a stormy night where a young man, eager to try a Ouija board, awakens a sinister presence that won't leave him alone. What would you do if you couldn't get rid of the evil you had summoned?
Bad decision.
I can say from personal experience that trying a Ouija board is a big mistake. When I was younger, I was deeply interested in paranormal activities. I believed in them and constantly sought ways to contact the other world. That's when I discovered the Ouija board on a website. I got instantly excited and started researching more about it, until I finally ordered one for myself. I always wanted to try it, but my family was always at home and I didn't want to try it in front of them. There was a weekend when my parents were in town and my brother went camping with the Boy Scouts, so I had the house to myself for the whole weekend. The weather was terrible, windy and rainy, but I felt a rainy night would make it more ritualistic. Around midnight, I placed the board in my dining room and started reading a small black instruction book that came with it, describing all the rules for playing. It clearly said it wasn't safe to play alone, but I had no one else to play with. I dimmed the lights and started asking a bunch of questions that didn't generate answers. I tried many times for about an hour, but nothing happened, so eventually I put the board away and went to bed. Later, I woke up in the middle of the night to a creak downstairs near the front door. I tried not to think much of it, but then I heard it again, and this time it was closer to the stairs. I sat up in bed, on alert. That's when I started to worry. I heard another creak, this time from one of the steps. I was sure someone was in my house. The creaks got closer until they were right outside my door, and then they stopped. I thought I would see someone peering into my room from the hallway. It felt like hours passed as I lay there, gripping my blankets, waiting for something to happen. A lightning strike from the storm briefly illuminated my bedroom, and I swear I saw a bodiless shadow standing in the doorway. I tried to hold my breath to stay as still as possible, and then my door slammed shut. I couldn't help but scream. But now I was completely under my covers, trembling in fear. Suddenly, I felt something pulling forcefully at the sheets from the foot of the bed, as if trying to rip them off me. My hands held on tight, struggling in the darkness until the pull abruptly stopped. When the sun started to rise, I finally dared to take a look. My room was as empty as before. I walked out of my bedroom to look for signs of a break-in. Everything seemed normal, no broken windows or unlocked doors. Then I saw the Ouija board on the dining table, so I immediately connected the events with the board. I tried to get rid of the board, but nothing worked. Neither breaking it nor burning it did anything. I was terrified. I went back to my room, closed the curtains, and gathered the courage to play again. I asked if anyone was present. I heard a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere, clearly saying, "Yes." I challenged myself and asked it to show itself. The atmosphere suddenly chilled. A deformed and twisted shadow began to form in front of me, like a kind of swirling darkness. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. The shadow moved around as if it was curious. I felt its cold presence and its icy breath on my neck as it whispered unintelligible things before fading away. I demanded it leave me alone, and surprisingly, it complied. Then I asked if it had told the truth, and it said no. Immediately, I threw the board in the trash and got it out of my house as quickly as possible. Since then, I have kept this episode a secret, fearing that talking about it will make it come back. There's only one thing that still disturbs me. I don't know if it really left or if it's still with me. Even after 3 years, I still feel a presence around me. I think I shouldn't have gotten rid of the board without closing the session first and making sure it was gone.
Thank you for journeying with us through the dark passages of these stories. If you enjoyed them, give us a like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss more tales of terror. Visit our channel to discover more incredible stories and let the fear continue. Remember, in the shadows, there are always more secrets to unveil. Until next time, where fear will once again be your companion.